Hi, today we are talking with Jackie Petzel, who's a longtime runner. And I'm really excited about this one because Jackie is my running buddy. We ran 2 marathons together and numerous other races. Um, that's how we got to be friends, was through running. We were both with Team in Training on the North team, and we just happened to pace together, and a lifelong friendship was born. So, Jackie, let me start by asking you, what first got you into running?
Um, Honestly, it was a dare. So this was like more than 10 years ago. I was actually sitting with someone that I was dating at the time, watching The Biggest Loser on TV, back when that was, the big thing on TV. And they, at the end of the season, walked a marathon. And so I was sitting there and I'm like crying, I'm all emotional. These people have gone through this huge journey. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to run a marathon someday. And the person looked at me and laughed. And he was like, you can't even run like a couple of blocks. How the heck are you ever going to run a marathon? And I was like, okay, that might be true, but I might be able to do it someday. So that night, I went online and I started Googling, like marathon training or marathon training teams, or because I lived in the city of Chicago, so running clubs in Chicago for beginners, and Team in Training popped up. So I literally had never even run a 5K before in my entire life. I was the kid that would like, get a doctor's note to not run in gym class. I would be like, oh, my head hurts, or like my stomach hurts, because I didn't want to do anything active. And then 6 months later, I ran my first marathon. And I didn't even sign up for a full marathon. I signed up for a half marathon and accidentally ran a full, as I tell people.
So, at what point was it during your training for that first marathon that you looked in the mirror and said, yeah, I'm a runner? How did that
Honestly, I don't know if I ever did. But the only reason why I went from signing up for a half marathon to doing a full marathon is because of peer pressure.
happen?
I started training and I was one of maybe like a handful of people on the North team that were signed up for the half marathon, the rock and roll half. And everyone else was training for the full. So I would start running with a group that was like really friendly in my pace range. And it would get to the point where I was supposed to turn around and they were supposed to keep going. So when it got to that point and we were all like talking, laughing, like bonding, and I was like, well, I don't want to miss out on the fun. So I'm just going to go a little bit further. I'm going to go a little bit further. And every week I was going further than I needed to. And that's when one of the coaches was like, okay, you're already basically halfway there. Like, you can clearly do this. So even if you run the first half and walk the second half, like, just why would you not just try for the full? So the only reason I did it is because I wanted to train with my friends.
The best kind of peer pressure.
Yeah, it was funny.
So, and one of the themes that's been coming up as I've been talking to people is that running really seems to, even though you're on your own, you're not like, part of a team that shares that success. People seem to connect when they run. And, like it has for you and I, it really creates some great friendships. And I think part of that is that we see each other at our best and we see each other at our worst.
And it's usually not planned.
Right. So
we don't see it coming.
Yeah. So give me your thoughts on that.
100%. And it's funny because you kind of find those people like subconsciously. They're never the people you think that you're going to mesh well with. Like, you and I, like, on paper, people might not have ever thought we would be running together. Not that we're so different, but they just would have not categorized us together, like in general, if they weren't runners. And it was like, we were similar paces. We had periods of time where we loved to talk, periods of time where we both would just give each other the look, and we knew, like, okay, we're both kind of struggling right now, so we need to just like take a break. And it's like, you look at people in the military and you say, they're like their brothers for life because they go through something so challenging in a totally different way. I'm not saying it's anything remotely the same, but when you go through hard things with somebody, it bonds you in a way that you can't describe. And I mean, anything from saying, you know what, I woke up this morning and I didn't want to show up, but my friend texted me and said, I'm parking in this lot. See you in 10 minutes. We're going to do this. And you're like, well, crap. Now I have to show up and be there because I don't want to let someone down. Or, when one person's like, I am really struggling today. I'm going to need like a little extra from you. And then 2 weeks later, it flip-flops.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm having a bad run, you're having a great run. And we've experienced that so many times. Whether it be like, oh, I didn't hydrate the right way, or I ate something funny last night, or just like my headspace isn't right today. Like, you carry each other through in a way that you can't describe. It's just really amazing.
And I think, one of the things that I learned in my first season was about the bite me zone. And I think that's so important. The bite me zone is when you don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want anybody to encourage you. You don't want any, you just want to be left alone. And I think it's hard to recognize that in other situations, but I
feel like you know more about my bite me zone than any guy I could ever date would understand. It's like a very unique relationship.
And for those of you who don't know, Jackie and I actually travel literally halfway around the world together. And we spent a week in New Zealand. So, 19 hours on a plane, a week in a foreign country, 19 hours back. And we were still friends when we got back.
Which is rare.
Which is rare. And I think that's because of the way that we met and the fact that we know each other's bite me zones.
100%. Like, people always joke, like, if you're dating someone or engaged to someone, you really don't know them unless you travel with them. For me, I'm like, no, you don't know someone unless you finish a marathon with them, and then traveling is nothing. Like, that's no big deal. After you train for marathons and run marathons together, traveling, oh, we could do it. And I had so many friends who were going on long trips, and they would complain and they would say, I took my friend and it was such a bummer. Like, they wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, whatever. And I was like, we get each other because we've done horrible things together to our bodies. So if you can run 26.2 miles and train for, several months together weekly and still like each other, you can pretty much do anything with that person.
Completely agree. So with the whole pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, we don't have races anymore. Well, at least not right now. How are you still motivating yourself to get out and run, even though there's not a race on your calendar?
That's hard. It's a struggle for me, honestly. Like, even throughout the winter, I'll say, I'm going to keep up with it, even if it's not extreme distance, double digits, whatever. I try to say, like, just go for a couple 2 or 3 mile runs a week. And for me, being at the gym was helpful. Like, at least if I was around people in cold weather, that would help me. But this was like, I didn't really want to go to the paths because the paths by me are actually really crowded. The gyms were closed. And I'm super heat sensitive in the summer. So if I don't get my butt up like super early, like we would do on Saturday morning long trainings, I like forget about it. So for me, it's like, I've been struggling. I've only recently, maybe within the last 2 weeks, started kind of getting a routine again. But I need that energy of people around me. I'm not a good solo runner. Like, I know Patrice was like, you know, I get up and I go through the city and I'll see other runners and we'll give a wave and, you know, a nod, which is true. They do that. But I need like someone next to me, someone behind me. Like, I need to feel that socializing.
Yeah.
And if I don't have that, I struggle.
Yeah. I think even if you're not having a conversation, if you're both being quiet, it's still that being with somebody. It makes a big difference.
Definitely. And not having a goal. When you have a race, you know, okay, you're either going to be, you know, sick that morning and not show up, or you're going to look like a total moron and you're going to be like dry heaving on the side of the road. So like, what, come on, you got to do something.
Yep.
But when you don't have a race and you're by yourself, it's like, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the races, you know, not having them, it's hard to get motivated because you put that race on your calendar, you pay for it, you plan to do it with somebody, you got to show up. You've got to do it, and you don't want to embarrass yourself, so you're going to do the training, and it's hard without
And those virtual races, I'm sorry, but they do nothing for me. I just,
me neither.
I'm like, yeah, I'll put the Garmin on the dog, you know, let her run around the yard and I'll claim I did it. Like, there's no, like, you don't have that excitement of like crossing the finish line and being around people who are cheering you on. Like, to me, what's the point? I may as well just go attempt a run by myself and walk half of it, you know, like, it's just not motivating to me.
Yeah. Well, even at the marathon, at the start line, you know, you kind of forget all of the anxiety about whether or not I can do this, and you just kind of take in that energy of the crowd, and it's wonderful.
I tell you, whenever people who are not runners say like, oh, I could never be a runner, I would feel insecure, or I'm really slow, or, you know, I've never run more than a mile, I could never join a team. I always tell them, like, first of all, you got to be kidding me. I could barely run a mile. And that was like training to run a mile 3 weeks prior to my first training. Like, I was struggling. And I'm like super, super mega slow. And everyone's like, oh, what, are you an 8-minute miler? No, I'm like legitimately slow. And I felt accepted. And even when I didn't get faster, maybe I would have been, you know, I could run farther, but I never got faster. And I don't think I ever will get faster. But I feel accepted at every single race or training that I have ever been to, because there's this camaraderie between runners that everyone wants you to succeed. And 90% of runners are not so talented that they're that kind of competitive. You know, like, they're not all elite runners. The majority of runners are like you and me. Like, they're doing it because they want a challenge, they want to be in shape, they like the social aspect. So I always try to tell people, like, you will be at a race by yourself and complete strangers will be cheering you on and helping you get through it. And that is like, that's the kind of stuff that brings tear to my eyes, just remembering marathon moments. It's amazing.
I remember the first marathon that we ran together, there was somebody holding a sign that said, team in training, you don't know me, but you run for me. And I remember both of us teared up, you know, partly because we were exhausted and
we might have been loopy,
but it was just so validating to see, you know. And I think sometimes people bring out signs or they come out to cheer and they're not necessarily cheering for, you know, their friend or relative who's running. And I don't know if they realize how much that means to us when we're out there.
Exactly.
When you're completely exhausted and you're wondering, why did I do this to myself? And you don't know if you can finish, and somebody has a funny sign that makes you laugh. Like, that's huge.
Totally.
And it's, I think it plays into that sense of community.
I agree. This past year, this last October, I did not run, but last minute decided to go and cheer. And so I was trying to like mentally get myself, because I'm like, okay, every year it's pretty much the same unless a bridge closes or something last minute, but it's pretty much the exact same route. And so I'm trying to remember, like, okay, where were the dead zones? that you and I got really quiet. And my hands were swollen because that's what happens when I don't feel correctly. And there's no noise, there's no spectators, and you're like, literally all you hear is the pounding of feet around you, and it like gets to you, and you start to get like, ugh, like twitchy.
Yeah.
And so I went to one of those spots this year, and it was only pretty much because I was like trying to find another one, couldn't find parking, whatever. So ended up at this one area where there was not one spectator. And I held up a sign that said, "Dick deep, you sexy beast." And I was hooting and hollering and ringing my cowbell and dancing. And it was so windy that I had to have my face wrapped in a scarf because I was getting like runny noses, like wet eyes. And I'm like, I'm not running this. I need to like, I'm being a little sensitive, like, suck it up, cheer for these people. And I stayed until basically like the last couple people came through. And I tell you, people were high-fiving me. Strangers were hugging me. They were like, you don't understand what this means. Like, we've been on this long stretch and we haven't seen one person. We haven't heard music. My phone is dead. I can't listen to music and I'm struggling right now. And like, that made my day. And I'm like, no, I do understand because I have so been there. And it's just the little things that get you through.
Mm-hmm. I think when we kind of get back to normal and these races start happening, we need to kind of form a Find the Dead Zones group.
Totally.
And cheer the dead zones.
Yes, I agree. Because it's hard. And
Yeah.
I tried, when I first started running, I tried to not run with music when I was by myself, like before I had like my group or whatever. And I couldn't do it. Like I needed something. And finally, when I started running with people, I was like, okay, save the music for when you really, really, really need it. Or if you break from the group, like have it be like your emergency thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, you and we've run many long runs without music together.
Yeah.
It's just like knowing someone's there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do find yourself running alone and you're running with music, how do you pick your, like, what do you listen to? How do you pick your music?
Honestly, it's so embarrassing. I listen to like fitness pop music on Pandora or like music from Glee, literally like the TV show, because I am a musical theater nerd. So I just want something cheesy and upbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm like really grooving and like really getting into my room, I'll throw on some Eminem to really just, grit it up.
Nice.
So if someone were to look at my playlist, they'd be like, what is wrong with you? That doesn't go together.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Sometimes you need something happy to just bounce along to, and sometimes you need something kind of powerful to help you grit
there was an app like, gosh, like I don't even know if this still exists, but there used to be an app that would play music according to your like beats per minute, like with your foot. Yeah, so you would type in, 8-minute mile, 10-minute mile, whatever, and it would pop up all the songs that are literally to the beat of your run.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of how I trained myself just to keep pace. It wasn't about speed. I struggled to be able to maintain one pace because you and I both know, and all runners know, that at the beginning of a race, you get super pumped up and you want to like zoom out there, and then you go out too fast and then you burn out. So learning how to keep a pace is really a big deal.
Do you remember our first marathon together? We went out and everything was going great, and we looked at our Garmins and went, oh crap, we are going way too fast.
I was really impressed, but scared.
Absolutely.
I was like, we're not even going to make it to like mile 10. We're going to be like laying on the side of the road.
Like we're going to be passed out by Boys Town. This is not going to work.
And we were like, but we're feeling good. Like, should we? No, we shouldn't. We know better.
So what are your thoughts on shoes? Do you have a favorite? Do you stick with the same brand? Do you try different things?
I stuck with the exact same Brooks for a couple of years. And then you tried a different Brooks and you said you liked it. So then I switched and then I switched back. But pretty much, like, I think I kind of stick with Brooks. I need a stability shoe. I know that. I have just wonky feet. I don't have a good form. I don't have great posture. Like, I need that extra stability for sure. And of course, all those like barefoot running and all that. Oh, I would break my foot trying to do that.
I totally would.
I'm like, but I want to be cool. I so want to be cool, but it's just not going to happen.
No, definitely not for me either. I remember one of my first races, there was a guy at the start line who had the Vibrams on. Yeah. And he was just I think he put them on and thought that he was just gonna fly like the wind. And at about mile 3.5 of the 10K, he was like doubled over on the side of the road.
Because he probably had never worn them before.
Exactly. And as we know, nothing new on race day.
And I will tell you that first year I was like, oh, I mean, this is my race singlet. It's from Team in Training. Like, I finally ironed on my letters last night. I've never worn it before. It's fine. Girl. Chafing everywhere. I was like, yeah, that was bad.
You will find
because when you wear it, if it's inevitable and you're going to chafe, but at least you know where to put the body glide.
Right. Because there's always that seam or that tag or something that, you're not going to, when you try it on, it feels perfectly comfortable. Mile 5, you realize not so comfortable.
And then the next day when you take a shower,
then you're reminded
the most painful.
Every spot where you chafed.
That's the worst, I think.
So how about hydration? What do you use or hydration and fuel? What do you use when you're out there?
It's funny, after almost 10 years of distance running, I still don't have that down pat. I don't know what my problem is. So I do water and Gatorade every time I'm doing basically like, I don't know, over 5 miles or so, 45, 50 minutes of running. And so I'll usually have one little water bottle and one little with Gatorade in it. And I kind of switch off. But for whatever reason, at mile 10, my hands swell up and everything. And I've tried salt tabs. They make my stomach sick. I've tried Noon. It's okay, but I still feel like it's not enough. And I'm like, that's why when you say, like, when did you feel like a real runner? I'm not. I don't even know hydration. It's only been 10 years and I can't figure it out. Food, down pat. I've got my routine. I've got my pretzels and my Twizzlers and Jolly Ranchers. And my stomach is always settled. I feel like I have energy, but the hydration thing, I don't know. And, the other problem for me is I'm really sensitive to the way that races mix their sports drinks.
Yeah.
Ooh, if it is, too light, it doesn't do anything for me. And if it's too heavy, I will get sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important lesson that we learned with team, or at least, I know I did my first season, was you never know what's going to be at those aid stations, if they're going to have anything, first of all. And sometimes you take a sip of that Gatorade, you're like, whoa, this is so strong. Like,
it tastes like Jell-O mix in water.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to finish this race with a stomach ache, so we're not going to do that. You just never know. It's always kind of, with a really well organized race, maybe you can rely on them, but most races, it's kind of a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get.
I agree. I've seen too many where, and especially, if you're trying, if you're an extreme planner, like I'm
Mm.
going to look at the race map, I'm going to find out exactly what mile markers things are. And, I might have a friend or family member spectating, so I'm going to give them A, B, and C items at this point because I'm going to rely on mile marker 1.5, 3.5, whatever for this. And then you get there and they're like, sorry, we're out. And I'm like, I'm not that slow. Like,
Right.
really? You ran out of everything already. So it's like you have to be able to bend and flow, and it's not easy, especially in the summer when it's super hot, those hot races. Oh man.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I think that was all that I wanted to ask you, but is there anything that you want to add about being a runner, motivating yourself, life in general?
I think one of the big things is for anybody who's not a runner, everybody can run. You don't need to run fast. You don't need to only run. You can run, walk, and we're not ashamed to say that we've done that,
Yeah.
you can walk 5 minutes and run 2 minutes for an entire marathon, and you're still a marathoner and you're still a runner. And I think people have this idea in their head of how terrifying it would be to run a marathon or how they can't do it. It doesn't matter how you finish. It matters that you got to the start line and that you're going for it. And that's all that matters. And like your adrenaline, man, is it powerful. People don't understand, like when your body shuts down, your brain is still like, it has this oomph, and you see the crowd and you feel the excitement and the people around you, and it pulls you through. It just does. So for anybody, and I mean, we've had people on our team that have started running at the age of 7, in track or cross country or whatever. And we've had people on team that have started in their 40s or 50s. So it doesn't matter. And we have walkers on team in training that have finished the marathon within the time limit, speed walking. Mm-hmm. So anybody can do it. And I think that that's like a really powerful thing, because I couldn't run a mile and I signed up for a marathon. So if I can do it, and I'm not in crazy fit shape, like you don't have to be this like athlete on paper to be able to do it.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me. It was wonderful, as always, to talk to you and to see you. Thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait until we can run in person again soon.
I know. I need my running buddy back.
Yes. I love you.
Love you too.